Hi, Fred. Today we are going to pick up a little bit where we left off with Otto, but we're also going to be talking about a topic right now that you kind of told me about, which was the truth about disease and the reality of how the human body heals. Now, when we left off last time about Otto, there was some concluding statements here, and if you could just practically talk about that into how the body really heals in some of the theory of what Otto is and your practical experience for 50 years. So generally, just some general concluding statements. That was the respiration to the cells is very important, and the impairment of that respiration is impaired through how a cell might go from an oxygen-breathing cell to a cell that exists off fermentation. And according to Otto here, that respiration is more complicated than fermentation. So there's a lot of intricacies here, as you would say, thousands of variables in the human body in this process. So please kind of keep all of that in mind about, try to throw the theory and the practical application for the common person to kind of understand how the body really heals.
All right, Rory, and I just want everybody to know we're talking about Otto Warburg. Otto Warburg is a gentleman who won the Nobel Peace Prize, and I believe it was 1934. And he won it twice. He actually told us what the cause of cancer was, and I absolutely believe that. And I've been a fan of Otto Warburg for at least, without exaggeration, at least 40 years. I've always been, tremendously impressed by his research and the way his mind worked. And I focused a lot of my studies and the things I've done in my 45 years of practice basically on the same concept. And as I stated before, I've probably seen, a conservative estimate would be 25,000 people in all my years in practice. And I also, spoke to a large amount of people in groups, and they had, tried to answer their questions as best as I could based on, what I know and my experience. And so I think, as I said before, Otto Warburg's work is tremendous, and a lot of scientists have acknowledged it, that it is a reality. There are some people who think that his hypothesis is fabulous, but there is some new information that became available that actually improves upon it, but kind of takes us into a little bit of a different direction. Now, we have to remember that our liver, which is probably the most important organ in our body, produces approximately 3,000 or so metabolic enzymes. And metabolic enzymes are catalysts that every function in our body requires metabolic enzymes. Vitamins, the vitamins that you take out of your food and that we get from good supplements are actually co-enzymes, and they will not have any effect on the human body unless you have enough metabolic enzymes. Now, respiratory enzymes are the enzymes that Otto Warburg focused on, and he made us aware how critically they were important, because without a respiratory enzyme, the human cell cannot utilize oxygen. It just will not utilize oxygen. So he really tried to make us aware how important respiratory enzymes are. Now, in the body, when our lifestyle, whatever it is that enables the human body to develop cancer, and that's tricky. That's even debatable amongst legitimate big-time scientists. So people can get confused, and they can start mixing up, anecdotal information with philosophy, throw in a little bit of junk science and in a little bit of real science. I just recently read a book by a gentleman, and I thought it was a good book, but I think he's making one major mistake, where he said that because of Otto Warburg's work, he came to the conclusion that Otto Warburg was saying that we should not eat any fruits or vegetables, and that we should totally focus on a high animal protein diet. Well, I think that is a tremendous mistake. I don't really think that is what Otto Warburg was saying, and I certainly wouldn't recommend something like that. Then you could also take some epidemiological studies. Everybody talks about Paleolithic man and about the different races of people, even in Africa, that focus on a high protein diet, and they seem to be doing well. Their health generally seems good. But I think people are misunderstanding why. We have to fully understand the concept of what you leave out. If an African bushman that just takes an animal and throws it on a fire and eats it the way it is, and of course he has a good physique and he's relatively healthy, it doesn't mean that we should start going out in the woods and, hit an animal over the head and throw him on a fire, because we're not going to get the same results. We have to remember that there are other factors that are extremely important that determines what the food that you're eating, the effect it's going to have on your body. And that determination should be based on what you leave out. Don't forget, anybody that lives in a pristine environment, where the air is relatively clear, and where their source of food, no matter whether it's an animal food or it's a plant food, if it's free of pesticides, agrochemicals and hormones, it's not going to have the same effect as the same food is going to have on you when it's got the agrochemicals, the pesticides, and the hormones in it. In other words, if you're eating a piece of animal protein that's available today in our society, and it's not, grass-fed or organic, it's having a totally different effect on you than a piece of grass-fed beef, or a totally different effect on some tribe or some group of people that live in a very pristine environment in Africa or wherever it is. And that the animal is a game animal. Don't forget, the flesh of a game animal is totally different than the flesh of a domesticated animal. So the impact is going to be completely different. So we have to be aware that there are thousands of variables that, that should be taken into consideration when we come to these conclusions. A lot of people, when they evaluate Otto Warburg's work, or they evaluate any research, especially some of these double-blind studies, they have to realize there's only sometimes 3, 4, 5, 6, even 10 variables. There's thousands of variables that are taking place in the human condition. And that's what I try to focus in. I try to focus on as many of the variables that I'm aware of, that I see happening, and that's what I do in my life to the best of my ability. That is the key for me at this point in my life, that I'm in the 80s, to see how far I can take myself in this environment with a quality life here.